Coming up on today's episode.
Asking price is really interesting because what an agent tells me is not worth the toilet paper it's written on.
Okay.
So I start with that every time, and I say to clients, it's irrelevant what comes out of the agent's mouth in terms of what they're guiding, where the buyer interest is. You've got to go through that process of asking the key questions to establish the motivation and, the time pressure and the terms and the rest of it that you did. And then you've got to understand product knowledge in terms of what it's actually worth. So paying overs is irrelevant to me. You could have been still paying $100,000 less than what it was actually worth.
Yeah.
Because the guide price is misleading. When you see this constantly in any property forum about underquoting and the rest of it, and people say, the agent quoted $1 million and then they sold it for 1.2. It's just ridiculous. I'm like, well, no, if you actually knew what it was worth and you possibly were even at the auction, there might have been 5 or 6 people within 30 grand of that. That was what it was worth. Market dictated where it went, and that was based on all the other metrics that we've talked about already. So, you've got to understand that there is an element of underquoting, but there's also a misunderstanding with people that the agents are going to take you to the finish line with the right number, and they're just not.
Dodgy advice and bad decisions can cost you big in real estate. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Jo Agresta, and it's time to take control of your property journey together. Welcome back, everyone, to the No BS Real Estate Podcast, your listening how-to guide to the Australian financial and real estate market. I'm your host, Jo Agresta. Now, if you've ever made an offer and walked in thinking, did I just overpay and stuff this all up? Or maybe you're on the market right now and you keep losing on properties and you've made so many offers, you're just done and you don't know why you're losing or what you're negotiating on. Well, this episode's for you. Today, I'm joined by Scott Aggett, one of the most respected names in negotiation and an absolute powerhouse when it comes to helping buyers secure better deals. Now, Scott has personally negotiated over 4,000 property transactions, saved clients millions, and built one of the world's first ever negotiation as a service models. So after he exited Hello House in 2024, he's now working on something even bigger. Green Shoots Property Investing, a strategic new platform aimed at helping both home buyers and investors buy smarter. So in this episode, we're going to unpack his approach, the most common mistakes buyers are making in today's market, and answer real-world concerns pulled from Reddit, Facebook. Some of our listeners out there, you guys submit questions to us weekly. We're going to cover it all today. And we'll go through Scott's new solution that will help home buyers with Green Shoots Property Investing. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jo, thanks for having me.
Of course. I was so pumped up because when we caught up, I didn't really know, I thought, I've heard of negotiation as a service. I've heard of Hello House. And then I was kind of taken aback when I was like, shit, Karina got a really good guest. He wants to be on our little show, talk to our listeners. So I was really pumped up because negotiation is one of those really tough situations, as you know, and I think you've obviously found enough problems in it and a passion in it to go and solve it. So I want to unpack a few things, but let's rewind. Let's go back to the beginning and give some context to our listeners. So your perspective's unique and you started on the other side of the deal. So talk us through the early days. How did your career in real estate begin?
If you go right back, it was at school work experience. I don't know if you did this, but in year 10, I had a family member who's actually just been recently the Real Estate Institute in New South Wales president, Peter Matthews.
Oh, yeah. And
Pete was obsessed with property. He was 5 years ahead of me at school. And for my school work experience, I literally went to Ray White in Bankstown and watched my hero at work, Pete, and drive around in his Mitsubishi Magna. And I thought he was so cool when he was bad suit.
You're like, that's it. That's the career.
Yeah. So I did that. And then when I finished school, I did the full year property course, which was the only thing that was available at the time. And then, from age sort of 18 on, I've been, in depth in the industry in different roles as well, and also working in Sydney and London. And obviously what I'm doing nationwide now. Geez,
London would have been a very different experience, I think. So would that have given you a lot of inspiration? Did you take any learnings from London to Melbourne? Yeah.
I mean, the complete process is very different in the UK. It's a terrible system compared to buying property in Australia.
Really?
It's a completely different market. But there's some great takeaways there. There was some really interesting sales techniques. There was just great motivation from people that were successful in the industry. And it was, for me, it was going to, a much bigger environment at age 21, seeing how the rest of the world actually works. I spent 5 years doing that and got lots of experience, travel, food, friends, lifestyle, and work. And it was a great sort of grounding exercise for me to build on that and come back to Sydney and then straight into a full real estate career again.
I love that. And I think a lot of people in property I talk to, like I was the same as you, I started at 18 as a real estate agent. And I always think, like, does property just never leave us? Like that's it. You go into property once or do it for life.
I think it's a passion, isn't it?
Yeah.
I still love it. I'm 48 now. I still absolutely love it. So there I am reinventing another business in this space, and I'm super excited about it again.
It's so good. I love it because, it makes it like we see all of the problems, right? So you kind of get to know, especially with all your years of experience now, you've seen so much. So it makes me kind of go into that next question, which is what made you pivot from being like a selling agent and then focusing on buyers and negotiation specifically?
Yeah, well, I did 15 years when I came back from the UK. So I did 3 Bell property franchises. So the traditional residential sales agent, a little bit of commercial as well. And I didn't enjoy it. Like the last probably 4 years where I did the last franchise at Surrey Hills, I wasn't happy. I wasn't enjoying it. And that showed in the kind of quality of the work that I was doing as well. And the beef that I had with it is I wasn't prepared to lie to vendors to win business and lie to buyers by underquoting. Yet that was what I was competing against in terms of my peers. So the job was just getting harder and harder because I was just having a real difficulty with that, moral compass. But I didn't leave because I was making money, right? And it's hard, like you say. You're in the industry, you enjoy it, you progress through it, you're making money, you own a business. It's very difficult to walk away from those things, and it was the only thing that I knew. But what I knew that I was really passionate about was the negotiation part of it. So probably 10 years before I built Hello House, I had this idea of all I want to do is negotiate all day.
Wow.
How could I create a business around doing this? Because that's the bit that I really love. And that's the bit that I can see that the buyers, the general public that I'm dealing with, have got absolutely no clue. They're getting fleeced with their eyes wide open. And it's very easy to manipulate buyers. And they should be well aware of this when they're going through the process. They're going to be going through it with, looking through the lens of, what am I doing here that's a mistake that's going to cost me money, or how is the agent going to take advantage of me? They're not working for me, they're working for the seller. So I thought I want to go and do something in that space. And then I was very fortunate that I watched the rise of buyer's agents in Sydney at the time. Good or bad, I would see customers that I'd worked with for months. I built rapport with them. They'd come through my properties. All of a sudden, they'd disappear and they'd come back via a buyer's agent. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And then I watched what the buyer's agents are doing. I'm like, all they want to do is rush to the finish line really quickly, buy it as quickly as they can off market, and they'll pay a premium with a cherry on top to do that. And then the client is paying a luxury tax for that, but it's dressed up as they're there as a win. And I'm like, there's actually more smoke and mirrors on the buyer's agent side than there is on the bloody sales agent side. So I'm like,
that's an interesting take, actually.
Yeah. So like, from an agent's perspective, I'm like, this system is broken. Like, it's broken on this side. It's now broken on that side. But people just cannot see through that smoke and mirrors. So I looked at it and thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do something in this space, it needs to be transparent, because that doesn't exist in the real estate industry. It needs to be performance driven, because it doesn't exist on the buyer's agent side, or it didn't at that point. And it needs to be accountable. Like, you need to be, held to certain numbers and things and your outcomes. So I launched on the back of that Hello House, which was, what I built it as is a no win, no fee performance negotiation. So the client would find their own property, which was very different to the buyer's agent model and still is. And I think Hello House was pioneering globally from that perspective, that I looked at it and thought, well, there's all these buyer's agents coming in to solve the problem of investors. And there's a very small portion of those that are now filtering through into the owner-occupier market, which is about 75% of buyers in Australia. But that market is huge. Like, there's 500,000 of those transactions a year or whatever, or maybe 450 for owner-occupiers. Those buyers are actively wanting to go out and see these properties and be involved in the house hunt themselves. They're moving for a specific reason. That might be lifestyle driven, health driven, work driven, family, whatever that might be. But they know what they want and they know where they want to go and they know what that looks like in their mind. But they need that strategy and they need that analysis and negotiation and due diligence. And they don't want to pay a buyer's agent 2% for that luxury. So I thought, okay, this is great. I can do a high volume business that engages the people that are actively out there finding their own properties. And that worked really well. And Hello House started from there.
I love that, because the whole thing, like, I'm an advocate by trade, so started as a real estate agent, transitioned to buyer's agent, similar frustration, that moral compass of I can't, it's for me to compete, I have to bullshit, smoke and mirror everything and get sales, and it wasn't in my wheelhouse, right? And it's interesting that you say, like, it's a big process. There's a lot of buyer's agents. I'm seeing the rise of that now. So I think it was back in 2021 or 22, there was like less than 1% of the market that purchased with a buyer's advocate. And then fast forward to now, about 6% of the market are using a buyer's advocate. It's becoming way more common. And what I'm seeing is a lot of buyer's advocates coming in who don't have the experience, or maybe they don't have the same passion. They're doing it for ulterior motives, like money motivated. And then we're now opening up a different pool of problems in the space. So I like the fact that with Hello House, or even just in general, your passion of negotiation, no win, no fee is super attractive. Like, there's really no reason why a buyer, like, you'd be crazy not to just go to the service straight away and go, hello. Yep, I don't know what I'm doing.
Hello, house.
Yeah, hello, house.
That was the whole point of it. Yeah. Well, I think the problem was, though, and this is, learnings that you look back on now and realize, what the was I doing, like, with that model like that? That was just stupid. I was inviting all these problems. But really what I did is I was able to show people how much money I could save them.
Yeah.
I could quantify that, and it was transparent. So in that, aspect, it worked really well. But then all I was attracting was the bottom feeders, because once I said to you that, okay, well, my average purchase price is 1.3 million, my average saving below the target price that you set me after I do an accurate analysis is $41,000. So the next customer that comes in sets their expectation, their target price, $41,000 less, because they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay the performance fee, which was 15% of anything I saved you below the target price that you set. So I just dug a hole for myself that just got worse and worse the more I marketed my success. So then from there, it then morphed into, putting a retainer in place, which then got rid of the tire kickers and the bottom feeders. And then that increased over time. And then eventually I got to a point where we had scale that I didn't need the performance fee, and it just became more about a flat fee, because I'd proven to people over a 7-year period that
it could be done.
Yeah, it can be done, and we absolutely fight for the lowest possible price and to buy your dream home. And we don't need the performance kicker at the other end, because we've established that there's a huge amount of trust there already.
No, then that's super important. And like, I'm so excited for the rest of this discussion. We've barely scraped the surface, and already I'm like, I have other questions. Like, screw the interview ones that I prepared.
Yeah, freestyle.
Freestyle. But, like you were saying, you're one of the first people to do a negotiation as a service model. And that's why what you're describing just makes sense. From a home buyer perspective, there's not a lot of support. And I think it's Finder did a survey in 2022 that said 1 in 3 home buyers overpay by 30% or more on a property. And I believe that wholeheartedly. When you look at home buyers and their activity in the market, it's scary when I see, like, when I've gone to open for inspections to purchase for a client in the past, and I'll see the buyers there already at auction, and I'm seeing how quickly they're going way above what it should be. There's no strategy behind it.
It's awful.
I get sick in the stomach, and I've been at auctions, and I'm sure you've been in the same position, where I physically see someone win after it's gone over that price of maybe at the 50,000 mark, and I see that they've won, and they don't look happy. They look stressed at that moment. It's a gut drop, and I'm like, that's not how you should feel.
Yeah, and typically those people were caught bidding against themselves at the end to pay an extra 25, 50 or 75 grand or whatever to win it when they didn't have to. That's the other thing that just makes my skin crawl when I'm standing at an auction at a public. In a public scenario, watching people do that, I'm like, oh my God, you just need to stay strong here for 2 minutes and just have the right dialogue, and you'll save yourself $25,000 or whatever it might be. But people just don't know. They're so emotionally invested at that point. But the stats are terrible. I mean, we went through the whole MFAA and broke down years of history to determine what the buying process looks like. And it's 10.1 months on average to purchase a property. On average, you miss 5 times before you settle on property number 6. So you've wasted all that money on conveyances, building and pest reports, and heartache over that 10.1 months, including your time. 45% of Australian consumers that were interviewed by banks then reported to have buyer's remorse because they bought the wrong property, or they overpaid, or a combination of the two. So it's just a shit show. It's so bad. So, I was trying to really attack that problem to say, okay, well, it actually starts with strategy. And if you get the strategy part right, you can reduce your days on market significantly as an owner-occupier.
100%.
It's just about understanding where the right property is and being honest with yourself about what the, value pockets are, or what you can actually afford, before you then get into agent outreach and then, analysing the right properties and the price to pay, and then controlling the negotiation to win it.
And like, this is why it's all coming back to me. Like, the first time we caught up, I'm like, hey, I solved this problem with Abodey, but then you're like, hey, I solved this problem with negotiation. My brain just went, okay, cool, we got to do something. So, and it's awesome. Like, I now kind of want to switch gears a little bit. Tell us about Green Shoots, because that's your next venture, right? So you're launching soon. So Green Shoots Property Investing, what are you building, and who is it for this time?
It's interesting. So when I finished the earnout with Hello House in October, I just had a few down months, and I realised that I was getting messages from people in random places, like from mortgage brokers and things that used to refer us business, saying, we can't find you. There's no way online of communicating with you. There's no website or anything to refer your business. So I was like, okay, I'm sitting there watching the cricket over summer. I thought, I'll quickly spin up scottaggett.com, because I've got that domain, and at least people know that's me. And if they type in my name in, they'll find me. And I just built that around negotiation because I thought at some point in the next few months, I'll spin out another negotiation as a service style business and take that next kind of morph into what it looks like further from where we were at Hello House. But then 4 out of 5 of the referrals that were coming through, and all my business is referral based, were investors. So I was looking at it going, okay, well, this is really interesting. 80% of the traffic is investors that are coming through. So I'm not going to fight this because, the world's telling me to do something in that space. So I'm just going to go with it. And the language that I used when I was talking to my customers was, we were talking about extracting equity over certain periods and getting that sugar hit of capital growth now versus buying in. My philosophy long-term has been typically, if it's the right customer anyway, has been getting to these markets with data early, 6 to 18 months ahead of the herd, and then holding onto those assets long-term and seeing more of the full growth cycle where you can. So I would talk about that as finding markets that are showing signs of green shoots. And when I'd say to the customer, are you customer A looking for that sugar hit, or are you customer B looking for this de-risked green shoot approach, it would really resonate with the customers. And they'd say, oh, absolutely, I'm the green shoots one. I'm like, okay, great. So probably 95% of those customers that I'd asked that question said, I'm the green shoots person. So I'm like, again, I'm not going to fight this. The obvious,
they're telling you what they want.
To frame this is green shoots property investing. And that's really where it's kind of, grew from there, if you like, bad pun. Yeah. And then I just had to look at it, with my knowledge of 30 years of doing this, my exposure to lots of different prop tech people in the industry at the moment and what they're doing, and I guess where the puck is going and those things, to try to find part of the market that was unique to me and where I felt like there was an opportunity to do something that was really going to add value to the right customer. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's really exciting that that's what you've built. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff, I guess, that people don't realize that they need. So do you know yet, because I know it's early, not really early stage, but do you know yet, what people will be actually able to do? Is it more about that strategy, like you said, or is it kind of like negotiation as a service once again?
1 in 5 of my customers will still be negotiation as a service, and they'll be principal place of residence buyers, and they'll come to us with a property that they want to buy that they've probably already seen. Yep. Nice. So that's 1 in 5 of those customers. We'll still look after them long term because I think the negotiation thing is core to what we do.
Yeah, of course.
But the vast majority of this business is going to be squarely focused at the investors. And the bit that I want to address is what you talked about earlier already. There's a race of people coming into the industry that have got a no or very low skill base. That's affecting the industry as a whole. So I wanted to not only price myself out of that group, but also the value proposition has just got to be a completely different scenario. So that's really what I focused on in terms of building the Green Shoots property business, was to look at the ways that I could pull apart the industry, break down, the process, and then look to work with the absolute best-in-class people at each of those stages. So what I've done differently is broken it down to what I call the Green Shoots method, which is a 6-stage buying process. I've then gone and teamed up with the best strategy experts in the country. So I work very closely with game plans.
Oh, nice.
And Geordie and the team, that's built into the service. We then go into suburb selection. We're working with Dr. Matt at HTAG.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So Matt and I work really closely with every customer. So they get absolute PhD level best-in-class suburb selection as well, which gives them a lot of confidence to act there as well, which helps reduce the days on market because there's no confusion further down the line in the process.
Correct.
Then we get into working with people like OpenBA, Gary and others that have built custom AI tools and things for me to work on agent outreach. And we're working with different suppliers and platforms and things as well as we work out what the right solution for is. But generally speaking, that's the type of businesses that we want to work closely with. And we're doing that to find more properties earlier, pre and off market, reduce our buyer competition, find those negotiation outcomes that are going to be more favourable for our buyers because the sellers are showing more motivation. That's really the key for us. And then working really closely with the guys at Stash and other platforms, again, about deep level of due diligence to make sure that we cover off all those bases, that we're buying the right quality asset. And then me and my team on analysis and negotiation. And then before we hand over to Mike Mortlock and his team in terms of the depreciation. So we've got this,
full service
superstar full service team. I like to think that it's a really premium level service, and it's still very affordable for customers, but it's focused on transparency and performance driven.
I love that. I think that process just sounds so clear, so clean. And for someone who's for our listeners who are sitting there, we've got a lot of investors that also tune in. First time some have really, advanced or have a portfolio. And a lot of the time they say, there's a lot of services that exist or buyers agents that do try to build this into their services, but it's very boutique. But there's never been a standardized bigger business that's come out and said, this is how you do it.
Yeah, and I find that there's so much smoke and mirrors still in the industry. Like, I did a AI search, for example, of what are all the major buyers agents in Australia charging, and there's no answer because there's no transparency. So the first thing that I want to do is we're publicly putting that on the homepage, what it costs to work with us. But we can show the value that we're going to add straight away. Even most of my clients this year are saving 3% below their target price just in the negotiation alone. So my fee is effectively free. If you look at it through the lens of how much money we're saving them and buying below potentially what the valuation may come back at. So it's ways like that we want to justify it. We want to bring transparency. And the transparency part of it comes with also saying, listen, we might be the best analysis and negotiation team and great at asset selecting.
Yeah.
But we can't be the best at suburb selection or depreciation or, agent outreach with, those tools that we don't have the ability to build in-house or the strategy piece. So there's a lot of businesses trying to be a jack of all trades. I'm going the other way and saying, we're going to be an expert in our piece, but we've built an expert team.
It's like strategic partnerships will take us further in this journey, which I totally have the same methodology on because I've already said to you, I think the negotiation side, I'm like, this would be such a win for our mobile app and for the listeners that are coming in through the mobile app. This is the stuff they ask about. It's like, if I can't afford a buyer's agent, then what's an alternative? And I'm like, this is a good alternative, you know, to that approach in a lot of ways.
Yep. And that's what I wanted to do with Hello House was bring it to the mass market because people had this, option of either going it alone.
Yeah.
And we know they're getting murdered doing that. Or paying 2%, and most people can't justify it or can't afford it. A big expense when you're going through the buying process. So, it was a case of let's bring something to the market that's more affordable for people.
No, I love that. And, we've covered a lot of the questions I already had because, I have to keep talking about it. I guess one of the things that I want to switch gears on is I want to talk about the actual negotiation side now because a lot of the guys listening today, I get probably on average about 10 to 15 questions inboxed to me a week via email around negotiation, strategy and approach when it comes to auctions or when it comes to private sale. And I thought, okay, I have to cover this. So you're the perfect guest for it. We're going to dive into a couple of questions. And for those of you that have emailed, thank you so much. These questions are from you. So one of you asked, where do most buyers go wrong when it comes to negotiating?
Probably giving their cards away too early in the process, I think is a big one for us. So we'll speak to a buyer further into the process and they have already disclosed that they want a long settlement or a short settlement or they won't do a deposit release or they need something included or whatever. And those are all bargaining chips that I might refer to later in a negotiation that would allow me to sit at a certain price and not overpay. It's about moving with speed as well. So a lot of people don't have the ability and they don't have the confidence of understanding how to navigate through the buying process that they can move at the speed that's required to get the deal done. And language for me is crucial and it leaves clues. So if I'm an agent and I'm asking you particular questions and you don't answer them the way that I perceive you need to answer them for me to take you seriously, then I'll sell it to someone else and vice versa. You can put your foot in it very easily, the other way around. So language is really important. And that's a big part of what I coach in negotiation is the right words to use at a certain point. And that might be something that's as simple as saying, we're looking at multiple properties, but this is my preference. And preference is a really key word for me. It shows that I've got other options, but I'm committed to buying this one. So the agent says, okay, great. Well, I know that, you're serious on this one, so I'll keep talking to you because I can talk preference that we want to buy it and I can openly say that. But I also want them to know that I'm reversing the fear of loss to a certain degree, that I've got other options up my sleeve as well if this isn't going to work for me at the right price.
Oh, you would have died at what my grandmother did. She recently purchased, right? It just talks to this so well. So before we walked into this open for inspection, it was an apartment. She's, doing a downsize, like lifestyle change. I would never normally recommend an apartment to a young couple, but, she's settling down for the rest of her life. She wants to be comfortable. So we went to this open and before the open, it's me, my mum and her. We're Italian background, so you can imagine the squabbling. And I said, you're not to talk to the agent and say, I want to buy it. I like it. How much? Don't do any of that. Before you talk to the agent, talk to me. I said, just because then they're going to latch onto you. And I said, so just be careful with what you say. She goes, okay. So we walk into the property. This is the first time we're looking at it. And then I'm walking around and, my mum and I are like, oh yeah, it's pretty cute. It's a bit small. And then she, in front of about 6 other buyers, right, that are all there, she walks up to the agent loudly and goes, I want to buy. How much? And I've got, it's not a fruit market. What are you doing? And I was so stressed out. And then I looked at her, I was like, no, what are we doing? Like, game plan.
Yeah,
and
we
then
just spoke about this before.
I was like, we literally had a whole pep talk. And the agent, because then I started talking Italian and I just said, shush. I said, you've got 5 other buyers that all stopped walking around to look at this interaction. And then the agent, just by fluke, happened to understand Italian. She said back to my grandma, you should listen to your granddaughter.
Oh, that's sweet.
I'm like, thank God. And then my mum goes, what the fuck is she doing? Relax, it's fine. We'll figure it out. And then she goes, okay. And then she kind of went quiet for like 1 second and she goes, so if I buy today, how much? And I said, shut up. So anyway, moral of the story is she got the property, but I had a lot of undoing to do with the agent because the agent's like, oh, if you offer 505, I said, this house has been on market for 90 days. No. I said, just no, it's not worth it. It's never sold more than 500,000 in the last 10 years. So no, but we got there, we bought it, but that negotiation tactic, if you're a buyer listening, I don't recommend it. I don't know
Don't
how.
take Nan.
Don't take Nan.
Nonna.
Don't take Nonna. Leave her home. But it's just talking to that language, like it's so important. Like her approach was so direct, so like, I want it. And it's like, no, you prefer it.
Yeah. Well, the preference part of it is important in terms of the context of when you're in that stage of the negotiation. But like Nonna, I do use those leading questions and I have a bank of those questions that I'll refer to. And she's actually, I think, in going in the right direction. Just it's the timing of delivering that. No, I mean, you were bang on. Like that's not the thing to say right where you were in that process. My favorite question in negotiation is what buys it? And then shut up. And then I'll circumnavigate that if they don't get the answer that I want. And I'll keep going and I'll ask that question 5, 6, 7 different times to extract that number as best I can. So, and then I'll repeat that process to feed it back to them to get confirmation that is truly what's going to buy it. So I might say, okay, great. What buys it? And you might say, oh, look, we've got interest in the low to mid 800,000. So, okay, great. So would 810 buy it? No. Okay. So would 850 buy it hypothetically? Oh, okay. So what buys it?
Yep.
Okay. And then they might say, look, we've got interest at 830. You'd have to be at, 837 to buy it. Okay. So now we've moved on from, low to mid 8s to it's 837 that you need to pay. Yeah. And there might be an element of truth in that, or it might be some VAT in there still that we need to work away. But I'm getting closer to that. And then I might say to them, okay, great. Thanks, Jo. So just confirming 100% before I go back and speak to my buyer, 837,000 is going to buy it today with no further negotiation, correct?
Yep.
Love that. And I want your buy-in as the agent that you're going to engage with me at that level, and then the negotiation starts.
Yep, exactly.
And I'm trying not to pay 837. I might try and pay whatever we feel it's worth at that point, or whatever I can perceive I can save off that.
Well, it's like, and then when this kind of leads into my next question, like there's a lot of strategies that you can adopt. Do you find terms a lot of the time win over price?
Not really. This is an interesting question, actually. That's something that comes up quite a lot with people that I hear people say it's terms, or you got to find the right terms. I think the biggest thing for me is you've got to find the seller's motivation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the key thing. And then for me, I want to understand as well, one of the questions that I have in my arsenal that I use all the time is your vendor ready to sell?
Yeah, that's an important question.
Yeah, I want to know, are you actually ready to trade today? And often they're not, right? If you go back to our agent days and we put our agent hat back on, most of my clients weren't ready to sell at that early stage because I'd overcooked it to win the listing, or there was 3 or 4 other buyers they wanted to see come through on the weekend that had contracts on it already that were going to potentially make an offer. They're not ready to sell on Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock when you ask that question. Yeah. So then you need to hold your cards and then come hard Saturday afternoon or Monday morning or whatever it might be. So you got to pick your spot there. So the terms are important, but I think the motivation of the seller is the key thing to establish first. And then I think the best negotiators will understand what all the hurdles are in the sales process, level those out. So it makes it a very easy decision to take the seller from a no to a yes. And you alleviate all the buyer competition as best you can.
No, that's interesting because, I know so many people have like a different view of this, like what's going to buy it. Is it terms like saying, well, the buyer, let's say like the vendor in this case, wants a quick settlement because they've already bought another property. They're under a time pressure. So their motivation all of a sudden has skyrocketed from I don't have to sell to no, I have to get rid of this house. We're at a point where possibly any offer's going to buy it. But the settlement's my biggest problem because my settlement needs to line up with whatever date I have in mind. And that's where, like in the past when I've negotiated, I've found if that's the motivation, that's usually settlement's the problem, lining that up. Price becomes secondary. in a lot of cases, it has to balance, of course, but they'll take a sacrifice of like 5-10K less than, asking if we can do the settlement when they want it. But then in other cases where the vendors, like you said, are not as motivated, it's so true. It's like it comes down to that vendor motivation. If they're that person who needs to sell, needs to settle because of something else motivating them and pushing them out of the door, then yeah, you could possibly get it lower. But yeah, like you said, if you don't understand that motivation, then your tactic and your strategy's out the window.
And this comes from, sitting in the agent seat so much, and
right.
buyers would come through and they'd show red hot interest in it, and then they dictate terms to say, I'm ready to go, I've got an unconditional offer and it's 30 days. I'm like, well, that's great, I'm selling it to someone else. Why? Well, because my vendor wants 90 days and you've never asked that question and you don't care. You're just trying to dictate terms and knock the door down because you want it in 30 days' time, or the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you need to stop and ask the questions and understand the seller's motivation, understand what those terms are that they require, and then dress that up as the ultimate offer. So a good example, a real world example of this is a client that I was working with earlier this year. They went to an open for inspection by themselves, owner occupiers in Sydney, and they said to the agent of the open home, we love the house, we can only buy it if the vendors are willing to do a long settlement. We need 5 months settlement, which is a relevant question. That's fair, you'd think, right? But the problem is when I pick up the phone and ask the questions, I realize that the seller wants a long settlement. So I've just lost that card that I would otherwise use in the negotiation against the seller. Because when the agent said to me, they're looking for a long settlement, I would have said, oh, it's a shame. These guys really need to get in there quickly. Yep. So when it comes to you pushing me on price later on, I'd say, listen, we just can't budge on that because of the settlement issue. Like, we've given you that, so I'm sticking at 1.45. I can't give you that another 10 grand or 20 grand because there's a cost here for us that we're weighing up. It's not the right deal for us in terms of the timing of it, but we're making that work for your client, but it's going to come at a cost.
Yeah, I love this. So then I guess one of the other questions that we have is, and this is an interesting one, because it is a competitive market, obviously we have a supply-demand issue. It's in particular in Victoria, it's quite frustrating. Stats the other day, it was like, I think in Cranbourne East, there was like 111 properties available and, 1,300 people looking, right? Oh God, yeah, this is a problem. How does negotiation in this piece, how can it separate you when you're in that competitive stage? So in those scenarios where the agents typically go out and say it's a silent auction situation. So it's like, look, I got 5 buyers that want to make an offer. You make your best and final and let me know, and then we'll just pick and let you know what happens. And this is where I find a lot of buyers get turned out because that's where maybe they've been in this situation 6 times now. Like you said, the average I think was 5, times that they're in this position. What do you do in those situations? What's the strategy that you would adopt to get them through or over the line?
Yep, really difficult situation. And we're used to doing this all day because you're buying in hotspot locations or high growth locations. There's a lot of competition. There's very little supply. So there's a lot of buyers in the marketplace. And there's a lot of agents that are very transactional. So they just want to, pile up the buyer interest, have you all compete on the same time, and, the highest offer wins essentially as well. So to avoid that or avoid mistakes as best you can, I want to establish the ground rules and how the agent's going to play. Because I think a lot of buyers lose in that element alone, let alone price. And by that, I mean, I want to know that it's close of business 4 o'clock on Sunday that you're going to do a sealed bids and the highest offer is going to win. Or it's, you're going to open all the envelopes or the emails and then you're going to go back and give everyone another last go at it. Or you're going to disclose the highest offer and let everyone beat it. Not whatever that is. You need to know what the rules of engagement are so that you don't put your offer out there and it's used against you all weekend and you lose at 4:01 on Sunday afternoon. When if you ask the question and say asked for the final right of refusal, the agent might have gone through that entire process and then rang you at 2 minutes to 4 and said you need to beat 627,000 to win it, which is what we do. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
So it doesn't always work, but that's what we try to implement in a busy market, is to try to ask for that final right of refusal with an agent. And that's by building rapport. It's by showing empathy in terms of understanding the process that they've got to run and that they're going to extract the best price they can from the market and run a competitive process. So when you do all those things, I'm still saying that's great. But if I can ask you one favor, let me start by making a knockout bid. You can disclose that to everybody. You run your process. Now I know that it's going to be close of business on Sunday, whatever, that you're going to make a final decision, and your seller is ready to sell if they get a price at my level that I've offered already or beyond that. But I'd ask is that, can you call me back and disclose what the highest offer is? If I can beat it, I will, and your vendor will get the best possible price. If I can't beat it, you're going to get the best possible price.
Yep.
So you've got nothing to lose, and I'm not asking for anything in terms of a favor, and I'm a buyer's agent. We're going to do business again at some point in the future. I'd love to work with you. Yep. You'd be surprised how many people nationwide say yes.
Yeah, I
the
can
agents.
imagine.
It's shocking. I thought this will never work, and I started using it and implementing it all the time in these busy markets. And what I would get is the agents say, yeah, sure. I mean, who cares? Yeah, no worries. I'll give you a call at 5 to 4 tomorrow afternoon. And we wouldn't stress at all. We'd just sit there and relax. We've already done our analysis. We know what we need to pay. And they would come in, and the vast majority of the time, it would come in way over what we saw value at, because people don't know how to analyze property. And you've got all these buyers agents that are lazy, that just want to be transactional and pay what they've got to pay. And all the owner occupiers that are so wound up and are 10 months into the process and, again, overpay because they want to stop the fight.
Yeah,
so we don't
right.
always pay it, but at least it gives us an opportunity to win it in that process.
That's right, because the next kind of thought I had was, well, how do we, the overpaying side of things that we're, typically in these competitive situations, it's always like that knockout blow, like you said. It's like, bang, here's my offer, tell everyone. I think there's like a few things here. How do you is it just down to your property analysis that you wouldn't go for that property if you didn't think it was worth that amount that you're putting forward as the knockout blow? And that's kind of where people don't have to misconstrue overpaying for winning an offer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm big on the language of target price, which is your absolute maximum walkaway number. And I want my clients to have that line in the sand and understand that they've got no fear of loss if it sells for $1 more than that.
Yeah, I used to use that, what's the price you're happy to win and happy to lose at?
Yeah.
And then you'll be happy either way.
Yeah, exactly. So my clients never have any sort of regret in that regard if they lose it, because they've had that conversation earlier, in time, in private, without having to be pushed at the last minute. So I think that there's a big problem with that with emotional buyers, is that the agents play on that competition.
Correct.
And it'd be easy for me to say to you, Jo, I've seen you for 9 months around South Melbourne. I don't want, no disrespect, but I don't want to keep seeing you for the next 4 Saturdays or 10 Saturdays. It's going to take you that long. The market's moving. You can stop the fight for an extra 25 grand. Just chuck 25 grand on top and finish it, Jo.
Yeah.
It's easy language for me to sell you into paying that extra money, right? But if you're really confident on where the comparable sales evidence are, where the competing listings are, what your fear of loss is in terms of replicating that asset, I think is a really hard thing to price in, but people need to think about that and don't.
Yep.
So by that, I mean, there's a 3-bedroom property that's come up in South Melbourne at the price range. How often do they come up? If I miss this one, is it 3 months that I'm waiting to find another one? Or is there 3 more buses coming this afternoon at 10 past 3, 10 past 4 and 10 past 5, and I can buy another house easily? So how hard is it to replicate that? And that's got to be priced into where your walkaway price is as well.
Yeah, that's so true. No, I really like that answer, because then you've got the whole idea that I guess what do you think someone asked this, they said, what's the real cost of going into a negotiation without a strategy? And I think we've listed just now so many reasons why no strategy is going to be to your detriment, and why you stay on market for 10 months. So,
well, the risk is you keep missing out, so there's a cost there, or you overpay and there's a cost there. So you have to start with a strategy, and then when you get into the weeds in the right asset, you've got to really understand the nuts and bolts of what it's worth.
Yeah, spot on. Oh, it's huge. And I think one of the other segments that I love to do, because this is where we get the really unfiltered shit from Reddit, is my myth.
Scared of Reddit.
Don't be scared. So myth busting, right? It's a big thing, because this is where people kind of get their opportunity to have their say and say a few things. But I really would love to get your take on it, because you're the expert in this space. You're going to be able to answer this far better than what I'm going to be able to. So
I hope so.
I'm going to fire it at you. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, this is a Reddit myth and comment to bust. So this person writes, I offered 50K over asking and still lost. What else was I supposed to do?
Okay, good. Well, I mean, asking price is really interesting, because what an agent tells me is not worth the toilet paper it's written on.
Okay.
So I start with that every time, and I say to clients, it's irrelevant what comes out of the agent's mouth in terms of what they're guiding, where the buyer interest is. You've got to go through that process of asking the key questions to establish the motivation and the time pressure and the terms and the rest of it that you did, and then you've got to understand product knowledge in terms of what it's actually worth. So paying overs is irrelevant to me. You could have been still paying $100,000 less than what it was actually worth.
Yeah.
Because the guide price is misleading.
It's so true.
Yeah. So I think people have got to, that's actually a really interesting point, because that was a frustration from so many people. And you see this constantly in any property forum about underquoting and the rest of it. And people say, the agent quoted $1 million and then they sold it for 1.2. It's just ridiculous. I'm like, well, no, if you actually knew what it was worth and you possibly were even at the auction, there might have been 5 or 6 people within 30 grand of that. That was what it was worth. Market dictated where it went, and that was based on all the other metrics that we've talked about already. So, you've got to understand that there is an element of underquoting, but there's also a misunderstanding with people that the agents are going to take you to the finish line with the right number, and they're just not. Their job is to emotionally engage as many buyers as possible, create that platform of competition, and then let the market do its thing.
No, the great answer. And I think that, like you said, asking price is that misleading or that misguided advice that we kind of follow, on a property listing. It's like, oh, well, they asked for this and they're not selling it for that. It's like, well, no, generally it's probably 20% more.
Yeah, but even still, it might be 2% more, isn't it? You just don't know. You've just got to have that confidence that you know your number and it's worth X to you and it's not worth Y. So when it hits Y, you walk away. If it's in the X zone, you strike. And if that means you're $75,000 above asking price, but competition dictated that you had to go to $75,000, well, then that's what it's worth.
And this is where it goes back to strategy. It's like, have a strategy. This person writes, I'm scared to lowball or insult anyone. And they're quite polite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not scared to dictate terms on price, but I think lowballing is a really common issue that we dealt with estate agents, and I dealt with constantly when I hear buyers about how long they've been looking for. And it is a myth to think that you can just sort of lowball and win. And maybe you saw Arnie Sherrill do it in 1987 or something like that. She told you about it and how she, offered way less. It's all to do with market conditions. If you're buying areas where there's supply-demand, imbalances, whatever, and the market's moving, lowballing's not going to do shit. You're just going to lose. The issue for me, we can sort of, go down a rabbit hole here with lowballing offers, but there's one key thing for me. When you make an offer, you need to learn something from that offer if it gets rejected. So if it's too low, you get a no. If you get a no, you're going to have to start bidding against yourself. If you start bidding against yourself, the agent knows you're emotionally invested and they're more likely to keep saying no as they drive you further north in price. It's as simple as that. So my strategy is typically, and this is not a one-size-fits-all thing, so I don't want to sort of use this as a Band-Aid solution for everybody at home, but typically it's a 95 to 97% towards my target price is where I start with my first offer. And I either buy it with my first offer or I engage the seller because I'm close enough to the real number. And then it's a matter of just moving 1 or 2 steps to get the deal done. So over north of 4,000 transactions that I've done and probably over 10,000 negotiations in total, 95 to 97% is what I'm tracking, is where the sweet spot is for me to start. But it depends on market conditions. It depends on
so many factors.
Yeah, the supply levels. It depends on the price point you're at. There's a whole heap of different variables where you've come into the buying process, at what, stage that it's been on the market. There's a lot of different variables to it.
Oh, of course. It's like if you go back in time and look at when GFC happened and then there was all this stock, no buyer activity happening, completely different marketplace. It's like, we were dealing with, do you want to buy it? Buy it, buy it.
The lowballing thing is interesting for me as well, because there's a psychology around that everyone wants to buy it at the lowest price, right? And that's my whole business, is buying it at the lowest price. But it's buying the right asset at the right price, at the lowest price you can, right? So if you lowball and you win, I would almost argue that you've bought a dud property. Unless the timing is perfect and you find the unicorn in the haystack that's rainbow coloured and that was a vendor that absolutely desperately needed to sell and you just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Highly unlikely. Then really you're buying an asset that no one else wants. So you might have lowballed it in your perception, but you probably paid market value because there's no one else that wants to pay $1 more than you.
Yeah, that's
so you're buying the wrong asset.
Interesting. And this is why what you do is so important in this market, 100%. And this one, I love this one. I don't get why this happens, and it's actually become really common in the last 2 years that I've been doing this. The agent ghosted me after I made an offer. Is that normal?
Yes. Yep. And it's because you would have given them all the wrong buying signals and you would not have established what the rules of engagement are for the offer process. Yeah. So they might ask you, or they might not have asked you for an offer, and you put an offer in and they're not ready to sell, and they're just going to use that as fodder as they march on towards their auction or creating buyer competition against you. There's a whole heap of different options of how that plays out as to why the agent ghosts you, but you're making offers with no, we've used this before, but no fear of loss, right? There's no time pressure on the seller to make a decision to accept your offer. There's no understanding that if they don't buy this, you're walking to buy another property. You've given them no reasons to think that you won't be here again in a week or 2 weeks if they need you, but they don't need you because you're not at the right price level. Otherwise, I would have engaged you and you would have bought the property already.
Oh, it's so interesting. And yeah, that's actually a really good insight into that psychology, because it happens so often, right, where people are ghosted and then they come to me and they go, well, they don't get back to me, agents are shit. And I'm like, interesting. Like, what did you offer? What did you do?
Yeah. Everyone loves to point the finger at agents. So I'm not here to defend agents. I was one of them. And
we know what we did.
Yeah, exactly. And I left that game for a reason. But it's the agents are there to extract a premium result for the seller. They're not working for you. And there's a way that this process works in the industry. And unless you understand the game and how it's played, you should outsource it to an expert and professional, because you're spending what is possibly life's biggest financial outlay and you're flying in the dark.
Correct. And this is exactly why we have this show, right? It's to flex on what options do you have. If you're going to either go down the path of DIY, you're now listening to this episode where you've just heard about 10,000 ways and steps and things from an expert who has done this over probably 10,000 negotiations and then 4,000 result kind of driven ones that we've got data for. You're listening to this person. Why would you not engage them? That's how I kind of think of it, because if you're not buying property day in, day out, this is kind of like a 1 in every 5 to 7 year thing. If it's an owner occupier, if you're not planning on being a property investor or you don't want to do portfolio stuff, it's not your jam, that's fair enough. You don't do this all the time. So spend the money to get the protection, because when you go to sell your property, you have no hesitation in engaging a real estate agent. Yeah,
on the other side of the fence, it's bizarre, isn't it, the psychology about it? And the case study that I love to use as a talking point, and this is just a hypothetical, it's just a made up one for me, but this is so easy for people to understand when I say this as to what's happening to you in real time. People love talking about it over a barbecue, how much money they made in property or how they've just bought a property. It's a badge of honor in Australia to go it alone, right? It's a, you turn 21, when am I buying a property kind of scenario for a lot of Australians. And I'm talking about white privilege probably in that regard. It's not the right for everybody, but for the people that can afford it and that lucky position, they just thrive on owning property and getting to that stage. But when, Auntie Cheryl's at the barbecue telling you that she saved 20 grand in the negotiation, and you can do it too, you can buy it yourself, it was on at 850 and I bashed the agent down to 830 and got it done. What she doesn't realise is that the property was only worth 800,000. I knew who my demographic was, and I knew that they were Italian and they wanted to negotiate hard, like Nuna.
Yep.
And that if I put it at 850, I can give Nuna a 20 grand discount, and she's going to think that's a great result, and she's a hero. Meantime, I've just fleeced her for 30 grand.
Yeah,
that's what's happening in real time. You do not know the games that are going on in behind
the mental
you.
maths.
Yeah, so it's like, you might perceive it as a saving over here, but you're actually overpaying if you look at it from a different perspective. So you just need to understand that there's games at play here.
Jeez, Scott, I really loved this conversation, and we're coming to the end of our time. I feel like we could talk forever, so we might actually have you back on the show for another episode.
Anytime.
To break down some more stuff. But thank you so much for coming in. I think there's some really important topics we've broken down. I think the last question I'll always finish with is, for someone listening today who's curious about working with you or, getting your support, what do you want them to know, ahead of time, or how can they reach out?
Well, they can probably find me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest place, or they could go to scottaggett.com if they want to have a look at what we do on the website, and there'll be a link to Green Shoots property that we do. But I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest takeaway is I'm championing buyers' rights. So I've gone as far as, TV, radio, every platform I could possibly do to fight underquoting, bring transparency to the industry, and lift up people in this space. So if they want to work with someone that's got the right moral compass and is going to fight for that last $2,000 or $5,000 of their hard-earned money, that's the right customer for me.
I love that. Thank you again, Scott. This has been so insightful. So, guys, we've covered a lot today, from buyer psychology to deal strategy, and now what's coming with Green Shoots, which I'm so excited for. When it does launch, Scott, please let us know, because we'll promote that on our site, and we'll let all our listeners who tune in get some, access to that service of when they can get help from you. So if you're a home buyer and investor who's felt uncertain or overwhelmed or unsure what to say, and when it's time to make an offer, what to do, this is your sign to stop winging it and to actually get help and reach out to Scott. Scott, thank you for bringing the insights today and lifting the lid on what really happens behind the negotiation curtain and sharing that exciting news for what buyers can expect from Green Shoots property investing. I think that's going to be great.
Thanks, Jo. And we've only just started unraveling what happens behind the curtains.
I know. I was like, we have so much to cover. This will come into a part 2, I think. Here's what we learned today, guys. Buyers are winging it, and that's costing you guys big. So be cautious and get prepared. You can negotiate well without being pushy or emotional, but only if you have a plan in place. And services like Green Shoots Property Investing aren't a luxury. They're strategic, and they're a good move to make you save money, time, and also the stress. This is so stressful, this process. So you can find Scott at scottaggett.com and get the latest updates on the launch of Green Shoots and engage him to help you negotiate your next property offer or maybe auction strategy. And trust me, you'll want to follow him on Instagram or LinkedIn. He shares some seriously useful negotiation information and updates on what his next moves are. So if you liked this episode and there were a few aha moments, then don't forget to share it with someone who's buying and hit follow or subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap for this episode of the No BS Real Estate Podcast, powered by Abodey AI. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more guidance on your home buying journey, you can visit www.abodey.com.au for expert advice, property insights, and the tools you need to find the right home with confidence. If you're already on your journey, you can also download our app. Just search Abodey AI on the App Store or Google Play. Have any questions or want to connect, you can follow us on Instagram at abodey.com.au or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.